patriarchy. The mom is always a straight man because a kid never wants to see their mom like joked like being a joke. And this is most
because like that's the Disney thing of there's always a higher structure and you must listen to your parents.
Yeah, and then like the bellhop, he's like always at the bottom of the structure, right? He's like never anyone's straight man. He's never anyone's straight man.
Disney teaching you that you don't trust the poor.
right? And then you have Mr. Mosby, who's like this weird refined gentleman who's like better for this show. He's like better than this show. Like his career must have taken like a left turn or something, right? So then he's on the show and he's always the straight man until that one moment where he like breaks out of character, does something ridiculous, and then his friend is like, and that's the funniest part of the show, when Mr. Mosby lets his guard down and is goofy and is a kid again. And it's like,
well, Mosby is what I remember from that show. Well, granted, I love the desktop where it just has a Mosby in the far left of the desktop and says, "No running in my desktop."
It's so good.
I never thought I'd ever talk about Zack and Cody this much in an intelligent manner.
Well, we didn't either, but then we put on an episode and the theory totally holds water.
Oh, God. Is it actually good, or is it just like all the
no, the show's so bad.
Okay, good. I like it when things are bad. I don't have to watch them.
It's no Phineas and Ferb. We'll say.
Yeah, well, few things are, Tyler. Few things are.
And then, I don't know if we mentioned this, but like Phineas and Ferb is basically Rick and Morty for kids.
That is true.
It's basically that.
Yeah.
It's a high concept sci-fi with philosophical undertones. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's actually not that far off.
Okay, I was wondering about how this was going to go, and I can see we're already off to a great start. This is
good. Like I already. This is marvelous.
This is going to be a good episode. All right, we should stop talking about Disney Channel sitcoms and start talking about
Woody Allen.
So Daniel, is it true you've seen every Woody Allen movie?
I've seen every, but like I want to say like five or six. And to say like I've seen them all, like I've seen deep Woody Allen, like. Okay. Everything you wanted to know about sex but were too afraid to ask, I've seen that. He can confirm it in Vidiots Trivia. I was like, guys, I know what this movie is. Because it was Gene Wilder themed, and Gene Wilder has a small role in that film. I was like, guys, I've seen this movie. I know who the director is. It's Woody Allen. And he was like, what? I've seen, there's a sci-fi comedy he does with Diane Keaton. It's like this weird sci-fi, high concept sci-fi. I think it's called Sleepers.
But that's Sleeper. Like, I feel like that's one of the more popular ones.
I didn't know that. I've seen that.
Sleepers is, I have no idea what it is, but I've heard of the name Sleepers.
Well, there's
that.
I've seen Mighty Aphrodite. I've seen Hollywood Ending. I've seen Deconstructing Harry, which actually is really good. Deconstructing Harry is really good. I've seen Whatever Works in theaters. I paid to see that movie.
Oh my God. I remember reading the Entertainment Weekly's review for Whatever Works back when I still got that magazine in print form.
I saw that in theaters, bro. I like paid a ticket by myself. There was only one other person in the theater too. It was like this old lady, this old overweight lady, and we were like laughing at like the same jokes. And I remember thinking, in no context would I share anything with this lady. Like no, like if we were in line at Taco Bell, we wouldn't like share like items that we picked. Like it would just be, if she would be like a vegan, that one vegan that goes to Taco Bell, like so different from me.
This was just a cosmic moment where two people related on a single topic. Yeah. Granted, I've been the only person in a movie theater before, so let's...
I remember seeing Amazing Spider-Man in theaters on like a Tuesday during the day.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I saw that opening day, because somehow I thought it would have been good, and it was just...
And then I saw Amazing Spider-Man 2 in theaters under similar circumstances.
Oh my God. Please tell me you were dragged to it.
No.
I was holding out hope that it would be good.
Same. I was like, they're going to pay off on Richard Parker, right?
Good Lord.
They're going to pay off Richard Parker. They're going to tie up all those loose ends.
They're going to pay off all those mysteries. Boy, the halcyon days when we thought that was going to happen. All right, I have to introduce the show. Okay. Welcome back to the Hack Fraud Show. We're back talking about Woody Allen movies, and we have a guest. This is my often mentioned roommate, Daniel, joining us.
The resident Woody Allen expert.
As discussed, he has seen
pretty much all but like 5 of his movies.
I guess I guess I would be the resident Miyazaki expert. Is that my role in this?
That's something. I don't know if I have one wheelhouse expertise. I like to think that I have like
probably Wes Anderson.
I have like limited expertise on a wide range of topics. That's kind of...
Well, I do too. I just happen to have a lot concentrated in Miyazaki and Italy.
Wes Anderson, I guess, kind of... I have seen all of his movies, which is...
Well, what's weird about Woody Allen movies is that after you've seen about like 5 of them, you've pretty much seen all of them. Like he'll repeat.
That's one thing I've learned. That's one thing I learned this week is watching it go. Oh, there's that character.
Yeah.
Oh, there's this plot line. Oh, there's that dialogue.
No, he's totally right. Like he'll not only repeat like storylines, he'll also repeat the characters, he'll repeat the dialogue, the situation, he'll repeat the dynamics within a scene, he'll repeat the context for which that scene takes place, like the backstory, like the buried family secret. Yo, this was like 3 movies ago. I saw this movie already. Like, that's what happens when you're writing a movie a year.
Well, this is something I know is that, like, every Woody Allen movie, even if it doesn't take place in New York, it exists in some weird fantasy Manhattan where everyone is an academic, where everyone works, like, 6 hours a week, and they can just go around, and they're always going to the opera, and they're always running around. It's always the opera.
That's so true. Both of these movies that we're going to talk about today, that feature, like, prominently, like, going to the opera as, like, some kind of a plot point.
But isn't it only in one you actually see some of the opera?
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah, they actually go to the opera in Hannah and Her Sisters. Yeah. You don't see that in Husbands and Wives. You see this ostensible documentary films them having sex, but it doesn't film them at the opera.
Oh yeah, that's just sort of like they're talking about their jobs, but we never see their jobs, which is just...
Oh, the documentary device in Husbands and Wives, the second time around, I was not feeling it. I was like, this is annoying, especially because we just watched Hannah and Her Sisters, which I think is like really good. Like, I was surprised at how good it was. Like, I hadn't seen it in a while. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And the ending is like beautiful. But like, the whole documentary thing just does not work. Like, after a while, I'm like...
I think the mockumentary thing in Husbands and Wives is actually really funny.
Really?
Because I imagine Husbands and Wives is something that started life out as a play, and I imagine like it for having like the talking heads. What you do is just like have like a character with a big spotlight on them for a split second and say what they actually think, and like when they cut to like her ex-husband, it would just be him just coming on stage for 2 seconds, saying his bit, and then running away.
See, I think that would be even more interesting to see.
That's interesting, actually.
That's like a way better... I feel like what Husbands and Wives is like, Woody Allen wrote a movie that he's like, this isn't too different than anything I've ever done. He was like, how can I find a way to make this more different? And that's what it is. He's like, oh, I'll just make it a documentary.
Well, that doesn't seem to stop him these days.
Well, I kind of felt like, here's the odd thing, like, I actually really like Husbands and Wives, but it was Hannah and Her Sisters I'm actually not that sold on, so we might have something to talk about.
Oh, interesting. I was the other way around, but we'll get to that in a second. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here. Did you watch Midnight in Paris, by the way? I did, but it's fine if you didn't.
No, I'm a flighty man. I have all the time in the world, yet I decided to listen to lectures instead.
That's
and
fine.
Play Pokemon.
Maybe you made the right choice, but have you been watching anything else? Because I have very little to talk about.
I watched like 2 proper movies. One of them was Steven Spielberg's Lincoln.
Ooh, you finally saw that.
Yeah, well, for a while, like, I was fascinated with Lincoln, the historical figure, as a child, and like, I'm in a Civil War class right now, so it was really relevant to me. You know, Clay Keller said, I can't remember like who it was in Vidiots who said like, Bridge of Spies isn't a movie, but Spielberg is such a filmmaker that it feels like a movie regardless.
Yeah.
Lincoln has that, but maybe even more so.
Like, thank you.
I disagree.
Dude, I'm telling him like, Lincoln is not a human being in that movie. Like, there's only one scene where he's a real character, and that's when he's arguing with his wife. Cause like,
oh, that's interesting.
Because he's always just like folksy, and like they never bring him. Like, he's always the Lincoln Monument in that movie. Like, he's always like the man looking down on us who's too wise, and America's just lucky to have had him.
I so disagree. We've had this argument like 5 times.
Actually, I'm with Tyler on this because, like, having learned a lot about the Lincoln figure,
Yeah.
the person you read about is who's in the movie. Like, he'd always have a joke. He'd always be telling anecdotes. Like, he was always really folksy. Like, this apparently was just the guy he was. But I don't think the movie ever portrays him as perfect. Like, there's the big plot point of how he's going to get the amount of votes by just corrupting everyone, by just hiring people to go talk to Democrats.
Yeah,
and how, like, sometimes he just blow up at his cabinet.
Well, I love the idea of this movie. It's like supposedly a biopic of Abraham Lincoln, and like the main focus of this movie is them bribing people with jobs to pass the 13th Amendment.
Yeah, and it's because that's the thing about, like, as a movie, I have no idea what this is, but like as like a historical document, it's shockingly accurate for like a big Hollywood historical enterprise. Like, there is a lot of historical baggage that they stuff into this movie that I just didn't expect them to put in.
But what's funny is that, like, I feel like none of that is given any sort of weight or gravity because it's Spielberg making the film. So everything is just kind of like a joke. It's like, this is funny. We're bribing people. Hashtag love black people before it was cool. Like, that's what that movie is. Like, Lincoln has all these things where, like, he's talking to Martha and she says, you're gonna threaten me to go to, like, the psychiatric institute again. Like, right? And it's like a really, like, whoa, this movie's getting real. And then it's like, nope, the next scene, Lincoln's back to being pretty much a folksy, wise man again. It's like, I wanted to see that guy. Well,
personally, I have sort of conflicted opinions on Lincoln, historical figure, as well. And you're right, this movie does opt for, like, the romantic vision of Lincoln, but I think there's just enough of that undertone of, like, he was a bit of an authoritarian. Like, there is a point in this movie where he explains, like, how he justifies the Emancipation Proclamation. And what the movie gives you is he says, like, it was all about property. Mm-hmm. And that's literally what Lincoln said in historical documents about what he said that. And I think that's a case of, like, Lincoln trying his best not to phrase the Civil War and this particular amendment as a race issue. Mm-hmm. That's something that actually happened. Right. And I think that's something that kind of hurts Lincoln's legacy, is that how he tried to ignore what was looking at him in the face so often. And the movie I don't think ignores that, but I think you could make the argument that it doesn't go as deep as it should.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Like, there's a scene, like, at the end of this movie where they talk about, like, how he, like, mentioned, like, black people voting in a speech, and, like, Thaddeus Stevens is, like, angry at him that he, like, didn't go further. Like, the conflict between Lincoln and Thaddeus Stevens in this movie is so fascinating. It's, like...
Thaddeus Stevens, is he the Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah.
He's a great character.
He is fascinating in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, the end where he just goes home and takes off his wig.
Yeah.
And then, like, listen to this wife. I was like,
it's this awful bald cap.
I was like, that was like a great moment. I was like, I don't know. I just wanted that movie to just be more. Like, I wanted Oliver Stone in, like, his Nixon prime to make Lincoln.
Well, I think the lesson we're really reaching here is that, like, we need a black filmmaker to make a movie about Lincoln, because
different.
I'd be all for that.
Any white guy who, like, makes a movie about Lincoln is ultimately going to be like, well, you know, he had his foibles, but ultimately, like, you can't ignore, like, the myth of Abraham Lincoln. It's
because, like,
what kind of batshit crazy movie will we get from Spike Lee's Lincoln?
Oh my god,
so awesome! Because, like, there's moments in, like, the debate. What's the famous debates? Like the Douglas debates.
Yeah.
There's like moments
the
where
Douglas debates.
he's like he's basically saying, like, I'm not saying, like, you know, black people are, like, equal human beings, but what I am saying, there's, like, moments like this all throughout Lincoln's life. But Lincoln was he was such a deep thinker that I think he's aware of the hypocrisy in his own words. Because Lincoln was a very, very, very deep person. Like, he understood all of this. So, like, I would like to see a movie where Lincoln's, like, wrestling with himself. Because Lincoln was suffering from depression all his life. Like, he was like a very complex guy.
Yeah, he was manic depressive, that's true.
Yeah, and, like, this movie just kind of, like, glosses over it. Like, I feel like.
Well, you're also disappointed that they didn't... He has this theory based it's based in historical evidence, but that Lincoln was gay.
I totally think Lincoln was gay.
I don't know how you'd prove that, but I don't think it's been disproved. Granted, he had I think 4 children, so
gay people have had children.
I'm not too sure how much that holds water, but, like,
Elton John was married.
I'm gonna say this: never let the truth get in the way of a good movie.
I agree with that too, by the way.
Let's kind of just wrap this up. Like, Lincoln, fascinating historical figure. I think the movie overall does justice to it. Especially, I think it benefits from like its really narrow focus.
Yeah,
From like saying we're just going to do the 13th Amendment and we're going to pack as much into that as we can. Like the movie, this is 2 hours and 30 minutes of him passing the 13th Amendment and wrapping up the Civil War. And I think it's ultimately satisfying. I think you could argue it's a bit too Cliff Notesy at times, and I think there's like a really, really interesting. I think you're right, Dan. There's a really interesting Lincoln biopic somewhere, but there's no one's just had the guts to make it yet. But I think overall, I think Lincoln is a very admirable effort.
I haven't watched it in a while. I should probably watch it again. I at the moment think it's like the best movie Spielberg's made in the last 10 years, but
maybe
I can't quite opt for that because like as far as it's his film, this is some of his more subtle filmmaking. I mean, it still has the Kaminsky backlighting, making everything blue and I love that look. But like it's the camera doesn't move as much as he normally does. Right. It's very restrained. Like his compositions are very restrained. And like it's Spielberg in a different mode, and that's really interesting.
I think that's because Lincoln is like almost like he's treating history as he's like ashamed to like claim it as his own. That's why like I kind of didn't like it. It's like he's like I can't do too much things because history is like this magical thing, and I just have to be careful. Like I'm handling precious documents. Yeah,
and granted, when you're dealing with American history, especially a figure as like I think I was listening to a lecture and like a person who wrote about Lincoln, Jennifer L. Weber, said like Lincoln is akin to Jesus in American mythology.
It's so true.
It's totally true.
Is akin to so like you're always gonna. I think as long as it's gonna be like this big Hollywood project, you're always gonna get that kind of kid gloves on it. But I think Spielberg is smart enough and nuanced enough to kind of avoid that for this project. But I think I want to see Spike Lee's Lincoln.
Yeah, I think that's the takeaway here. We all just want to see Spike Lee's Lincoln movie.
Because Barry Jenkins wouldn't make an angry Spike Lincoln movie.
Yeah.
Angry Lincoln coming soon to theater.
That's a Tyler Perry movie.
Incredible.
Abolition, a Lincoln story.
And Medea will be in it.
Medea will be in it.
That'll be Thaddeus Stevens' wife.
Oh,
Medea.
She'll play Mary Todd.
All right.
Oh man, Tina Fey.
And
I also watched. We spent way too much time on Lincoln. I also watched the first of the Three Colors trilogy, Blue.
Oh.
That movie's fascinating.
Oh, it is. It is.
Well, granted, like it's kind of difficult to see because it's the Liberté edition of like that three trilogies.
Right.
At first, it's kind of hard to like, what does this have to do with freedom? But then you realize this is a character who has had freedom forced upon her.
Right.
By like losing these responsibilities so suddenly, she's just like instantly lost, and she doesn't know what to do with her life. And I think at one point, what really punctuates it is when she goes to find a new apartment. And they ask, "Oh, what do you do?" Nothing. I do nothing for a living. She has all the freedom in the world, and she doesn't know what to do with it. And only when she can like find tasks does she know what to do, because everything else is just like her locked away in her apartment, or just like going into or just trying to swim.
Right.
In those gorgeous sequences with her swimming. But like honestly, it's absolutely a gorgeous movie.
Right. It's probably the best looking of the
eyes is so interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
do y'all have anything?
I mean, I watched that movie like a couple months ago.
Me and him both watched it. We watched all three of them.
Yeah,
I want to see White and Red now.
White is the best one.
Okay, that's his opinion. I think White. I love them all. I think they're all spectacular. White is like the most entertaining. I think White is really fun and weird and kind of Coen-esque at times.
Yeah, White is so you will not be able to predict White. Like the movie happens and you're like, what?
Yeah,
I love those movies. So we might be onto something.
Yeah. But I love Blue though. It's such an interesting meditation on like what your life can become when you're kind of suddenly freed from all burdens unexpectedly. And the use of music...
Oh, continue.
The use of music in that movie is incredible. Yes. Like her kind of composing like her dead husband's unfinished symphony or something. Like maybe she composed them all. I think that's like a plot point.
Yeah, that's a plot point. This also was a Great Depression movie. Like, it's really hard to film depression because like that disease is so based around feeling unsatisfied, and that's what most filmmakers want to avoid, is a sense of unsatisfaction. So when you see a Great Depression movie, it kind of does like hit you. It's like, oh, we can do this. This is possible.
That's a good point.
So like, I commend it to that. Like, I can't wait to see White and Red. Whenever, if we do those on the podcast, or I just find magical time out of my schedule and watch them.
I think Reed wanted to do an episode. I would love to do a Krzysztof Kieslowski episode focusing on some of his other stuff at some point.
I'm all for it, man. This was interesting.
I really want to see the Decalogue.
Yeah, we have to watch the Decalogue.
Because that like 10...
What's that one?
It's like 10 hours, I think.
It's like a 10-hour like mini series that he made for like Polish television, and like it's based on the 10 Commandments, like loosely. It just sounds incredible.
I am intrigued.
I like how European filmmakers, they make films based on weird things. Like, I'm going to make a film based on the 10 Commandments, or I want to make a film based on the 3 colors of the French flag. Like, and it's like, it's not just him, too. Like, they'll all do, like, these weird adaptations of, like, abstract ideas. Yeah. Like, what's his face? The Fassbender. We'll do, like, I want to make it about, like, a year, like, a certain mode of, like, in history. And it's like, what? Okay.
All right. I only have a couple things to mention here. I don't know if I ever talked about the Cuban film I watched in History of International Film, but
you saw a Cuban film.
Yeah, it's called Memories of Underdevelopment. I don't have much to say because I was half asleep when I saw it, and
just like when I saw the Pyro.
Yeah. Made right around the time of like the revolution and all that stuff, so there's some interesting stuff going on there. But I can't speak too much about it, but
yeah.
And then
was it just like too early in the day? Or?
Oh, it was way too early, and I'd been up late the night before. I've done that far too many times. I can't remember what we were doing.
I've been there.
And then this week we watched an African movie from Senegal, I believe, called Hala, Xala, which was way less interesting than the premise led me to believe, because the premise of this movie...
The title sounds awesome.
Well, what the title means, Hala in like this language means the curse of impotence. So like this guy, he's polygamous, he's like marrying a third wife, and he's unable to consummate the marriage because he is like struck with impotence. And like the whole movie is like him trying to figure out like how to lift the curse. And trust me, this movie is way less interesting than I'm making it sound.
That movie sounds amazing.
You say like it's a Senegalese film about impotence, about a man who's on his third wife, and you go, "Oh, that's fascinating." Shit, it's boring.
No, it's about like, but like it ends up because like the filmmaker was like a Marxist, and it's about like socialism and like the like Chamber of Commerce in Senegal, and I swear to God, like 80% of the time in this movie, I had no idea what was going on, and that they follow this like caravan of like disabled people who are like all of them like can't use their legs in some way.
I want to remake just the movie you described to me.
And then
Tyler, everything you're saying makes me want to see this movie.
You know what? Seek it out if you're interested. Maybe it was just because I watched it in the class, but I was.
This movie sounds amazing.
It's like, oh, he's a Marxist. Okay, it's about socialism, and there's a caravan where people can't use their legs. Like, everything you're saying sells me more.
Okay. Maybe you can seek it. I don't know how widely available it is. The Criterion just put out like an early film by this filmmaker, so I imagine they'll get around to this one at some point.
This movie sounds awesome.
Sala, you said?
Hala, yes. Xala.
Xala. Interesting.
Yes, so that's all I have to talk. And I know you haven't been watching anything except for stand-up comedy. So.
Yeah, I've just been watching tons of stand-up comedy. Did I watch any movies today? We watched Woody Allen. No, I think the last movie I saw in theaters was like Kong.
Oh yeah. How was that?
Kong was actually really good. Okay.
What, Kong Skull Island?
Yeah. Okay, so like, I go, dude, come and see Kong with me. He's like, nah, I'll wait to Godzilla vs. Kong, because I like seeing two monsters fight. Like, I'm all for that. But, like, just one monster, that doesn't do it for me. But, like, he's on Skull Island, so there's tons of monsters for Kong to fight. So, like, this movie's just weird. And, like, it knows that it's weird. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's totally just, like, batshit insane. Samuel Jackson's just being a stupid character, but it's Samuel Jackson, so it's like, why not? And then, like, Brie Larson is in this movie, by the way. Take that for a second. Brie Larson just won an Oscar and is in Kong Skull Island.
Well, that's better than what most Oscar winners do, which is win an Oscar and then disappear from movies for 5 years.
And then, like,
well, that's the thing. Like, I saw the trailers for this thing, and I thought, like, this is either just going to be batshit crazy fun or awful.
It's
and from what you're saying,
fun.
it sounds like batshit crazy fun.
And then it has, like, this weird Apocalypse Now inspiration. Like, it's not trying to be Apocalypse Now, but it's like... But it's like, yeah, we saw that movie. We thought that was cool.
Ooh, I love Heart of Darkness adaptations.
Yeah, so it's basically Heart of Darkness with monsters.
All right, maybe I will.
I might drag Alex to this.
Yeah, it's really fun.
I opted to see Logan a second time instead, so I feel like I made the right call, but...
Well, Logan's a masterpiece, so...
Logan is amazing.
All right, so let's talk some Woody Allen movies, shall we?
I am all for this.
All right, so we kind of pulled, like, two films from, I think completely by accident, like, from his same, like, period, like the kind of late 80s, early 90s, when he was working with Mia Farrow and, like, kind of, I feel like maybe kind of a renaissance. Like, what was his early 80s like? I mean, I know he made, like, Manhattan and then...
So he's like...
Manhattan's, like, one of his huge...
Yeah, what's interesting about Woody Allen is the context under which he makes these movies. So, like, you have Annie Hall, then, like, there's, like, Manhattan. But, like, the way Manhattan started out, he wanted to make, like, this, like, murder mystery comedy, right? He's like, this isn't really working. I'll just take the best parts of it and make Manhattan. We'll shoot in black and white. I'll, like, put it to Rhapsody in blue, which is, like, a huge part of that movie. And he's like, and I'll even include, like, this underage girl that I'm dating at the time. What's her name? Mariel Hemingway or something? Yeah, and that movie's, like, fascinating, right? And then he has that, like, whatever he discarded from that, he still makes into a movie. It's called, like, Manhattan Murder Mystery, literally. And he makes it older, and it's, like, a terrible movie. So, like, there's that period, because, like, right after he follows up Manhattan, I'm trying to remember, like, what's after Manhattan. There's, like, these weird, like, period pieces. There's, like, Bullets Over Broadway. There's, like, Stardust Memories. There's all these weird, indulgent films that he's making with Diane Keaton.
Like, he seems to be kind of back in that with, like, a Cafe Society and, like, isn't Dancing in the Moonlight, like, a period piece?
Yeah, it's, like, all these, like, weird movies. And then there's that one, Ricky Cristina Barcelona, which is, like, a contemporary take on his, like, weird fascinations with, like European culture. I don't know. That's another conversation. But then you have, like, these movies where he's making with Mia Farrow, where he realizes that he doesn't have to be a comedian anymore. So, like, his movies are, like, seriously influenced by European cinema and then, like, really good, like, literature. Like, Crime and Punishment is, like around this period.
Well, you notice he, like, talks about Russian literature a lot over these movies. And the other thing is that I actually kind of want to see Interiors, because that movie was kind of, like, influenced by Bergman. And that came, like, in between Annie Hall and Manhattan. Somehow I missed that one. But it's kind of not in the canon. But all right, so we've got two.
Well, he makes so many fucking movies. Only so many can be in the canon.
Yeah,
I told him
he makes a movie a year.
I'm gonna put a picture of Woody Allen on my desk, and it says, "What's your excuse?"
That would definitely motivate me. But so we've got these two movies, both starring Woody Allen and Mia Farrow. Very interesting if you're a kind of a fan of, like, the autobiographical read on Woody Allen movies. And in both of these movies, he either moves on to someone, breaks up with Mia Farrow and moves on to someone either younger or related to her, which...
that is, like,
so perverse.
From movies is so difficult.
Let me tell you this. Mia Farrow's adopted daughter, who would marry Woody Allen, is one of the kids running around during Thanksgiving in Hannah and Her Sisters. It's so weird.
Oh, Dios mío.
But
and they're still together, so it must be true love, you know?
But we're not here to talk about Woody Allen's weird personal life. So which of these movies do we want to talk about first?
We'll do the one I watched first. Let's do Husbands and Wives.
Okay, all right.
I kind of love the mockumentary style in this, because one thing I think it really brings out is like how theatrical Woody Allen's scripts are, and how stage bound they could be, but like because it's a movie, he just has locations all over New York because it's always New York.
Right.
And well, actually more than that, like it's not New York, it is a fantasy Manhattan. And a Manhattan, I think, maybe exists somewhere. But like I don't know where to find it.
It's like Whit Stillman's Manhattan. It's like just like
Yeah.
yuppies, like privileged society. Like this is their culture. It's like we're all culture. Like it's like taken for granted that you're gonna get these references. Like it's things where he's like making double entendres about like classical music. It's like who is this movie for exactly?
Granted, in Hannah and Her Sisters, there's literally in the background of the Thanksgiving dinner a black servant.
Oh, I noticed that.
Oh my god!
Yeah, there's like no black people in this New York.
When I was making the thumbnail for this episode, I took this screenshot of like one of the dinners, and I was like, all right, I have to avoid cutting off the black servant's face, and I just couldn't figure out how to do it, so I changed the still I took from the movie.
Like that came up on screen, I said, "Oh no, what movie am I watching?"
And they don't even address that, but we'll get to that.
Jordan Peele needs to do a take on Woody Allen movies.
Oh, that'd be fascinating. But Husbands and Wives, 1992, yeah. You know, I didn't like this movie as much as I thought I would. I did like it, but it's got such a weird... I would love to see him, like, experiment with, you know, filmmaking techniques in this way again. I don't think he's really... He certainly hasn't done that recently.
He hasn't made another mockumentary.
I don't think so. And this mockumentary, quote unquote, is so weird because like you have the kind of the narrator and the talking head interviews and like, but the footage that they have makes no sense.
Yeah, like it's so inconsistent when it wants to be a mockumentary and when it wants to be just a normal film. Like that was my biggest problem with it because like there's moments where you have like who's the director that I was like, oh, he's like such a great actor, Sidney Pollack.
Oh, Sidney Pollack. Yeah.
So you have like his character, right, and he's telling stories where there's like flashbacks, and then you're like, okay, so this is just something that he's remembering, but then it's completely divorced from like the mockumentary aspect. Like he's not sticking to the mockumentary aspect the whole film. He's like, oh, I have a great scene, I'm just gonna go to it, and that was like my problem with it. I was like, okay, like pick a lane.
Well, that's the thing about it. We'll probably get into this more later. Is that like Woody Allen films feel so like strung together haphazardly. Like he has like all these ideas for like scenes and plot points, and he doesn't quite know how they all fit together. So it's like, all right, we'll just play jazz music over it. We'll just have talking heads here. We'll have a narrator here. We'll just cut to this. We'll just divide it up into episodes because I don't know how they connect.
Well, I kind of love that. Like, I kind of love that he can get away with that because, like, you know,
I love it too.
He's like, oh, you know, how am I going to fit all this into a movie? Like, fuck it, we'll just figure it out. And
that's what I liked about Hannah and Her Sisters because, like, everything just kind of felt like you were reading like short stories in a collection. There's like, you know, Sherwood Anderson. He has like that book where I think it's Winesburg, Ohio, or something like that. I forgot the title of it, but it's like. Everything's a short story, but they're like vaguely interconnected. Like that's what Hannah and Her Sisters feels like. And then the very last short story, it like ties almost everything together. Like, by the way, I'm pregnant.
Yeah. I mean, I almost disagree with you just because I feel like that's such a tightly constructed screenplay, but we'll get to that. Boy, we don't really want to talk about Husbands and Wives.
Well, the thing I want to talk about most is that because that is all like the Woody Allen periphery of like people having affairs of younger people. Yeah. Another professor sleeps with his students. Yeah. It's all about relationships and like. Grant, I will notice is like Woody Allen is really good at writing in their prime relationships. Yeah. Like, people just are just bouncing off each other, and they're talking, and of course, it's all about the opera, and classical music, and literature, and films, but they always have chemistry, and they always, there's a real tangible sense of, like, yeah, this is a couple. Well, yeah, these people have been married for a while, and that's hard to do.
No, and I was telling him, I was like, Woody Allen is totally an actor's director, like, and you see this actually more, this is actually a really interesting part of Husbands and Wives, and I think you notice it because of the mockumentary thing. Because, like, typically if we were going to do a mockumentary today, like, think about Modern Family, they always like to like overdo the fact like, hey, the camera's moving, there's a guy behind here. So it's like if someone's talking, we're gonna whip pan, we're gonna whip pan, we're gonna whip pan. Woody Allen doesn't do that. He'll hold the camera and like not cut away or pan it just because a new character's talking. Like someone will be talking off screen for a long time, and you will just hear them process their information. It's like you're seeing who this person is by the way they receive information.
That's in like all his movies. He very heavily resists the reverse shot.
Well, that's kind of why I think it feels theatrical, because like it's using off-screen space so much. Like in the beginning, where it's like this is where I was really involved with it in the beginning because it's just kind of a slap in the face. Is that like we have like who goes up? There's one point where they say like, "Hey, we're splitting up," and like Woody Allen's wife like runs off screen, and they're saying like, "You got to get back on," and it's like watching a play where like somebody's run behind the curtains, and you know they're still there. Like we're using that off. And we're using that off-screen space in like a way that's really theatrical, and in a way that makes it. The cameraman is it feels like a character, but nobody around him is aware of that. So it almost feels like he's hostage to this film. And there's an odd tension that I'm not too sure was intentional, but is fascinating to watch.
Yeah. Well, just to go back to like one point you were saying, like maybe like my favorite part of this movie is like Sidney Pollack and Judi Davis's storyline, where their characters like they like come right in at the beginning. Like it happens like right away. Like they announce they're separating, and like Sidney Pollack very quickly starts dating like his aerobics instructor, and like he kind of finds out like she's like they're coming out of a theater that's showing Akira Kurosawa's Ran, and he's talking to her where he's like, no, it's King Lear, like, and she's like, well, Shakespeare didn't write in Japanese, and like you could feel him like realizing like, oh dear God, like this woman is just an airhead, and like the whole like pseudo intellectualness of all these characters, and
we're like she talks about like the planets at that dinner party, and he just blows up.
Yeah,
and it's like, I'm sick of your shit, and it's kind of horrifying, yet kind of funny.
Yeah, and then that great scene where like he comes back and like his wife and Liam Neeson have just had sex, and like he comes in and
Neeson's just kind of there. He says, "Oh, what do I do?"
They get this
huge. He's great in this, by the way.
Liam Neeson is great. Him doing like his natural Irish accent is something you see so rarely, and it's great.
It's as good as Michael Caine just doing his natural accent.
Yeah, and he just seems like such a deer in the headlights the whole time. It's so entertaining.
Sidney Pollack is like a really good actor. I'm just so impressed at how good of an actor he is for how good of a director he is. And like Woody Allen knows him well enough, I feel that he knows what he can get away with. Because Sidney Pollack does like some really despicable things in the film, but I don't think you're ever really against Sidney Pollack as a person.
I'm definitely not.
Yeah, like you're always really on board with him.
Well, there was a point where I kind of wanted to be, but then the film kind of was like, yeah, he's a normal guy. Don't worry. Like Woody Allen is really good at like saying, getting you into the mindset of these characters, and the talking heads I think help with that. Is like you'll get a decision and then you'll have someone ask like, why did you make this decision, and they kind of just rack their heads and go like, sometimes they just go, I don't know. And I really love when a movie is willing to say like, I don't know why he's doing this.
Yeah, because that's how people are. Like people just do things sometimes.
Yeah, I'm kind of liking this movie more the more we talk about it.
Like now the more we talk about it.
I've kind of talked myself into liking it. I mean, it's interesting, and kind of Woody Allen like interacting with his student who played by Juliette Lewis, I think.
Oh, yeah, that is fascinating.
Her name is Rain. And then one little detail I love is when they go to that her birthday party, and you get this great moment with her parents, Blythe Danner and someone else, I don't know who that actor is, and they're like, oh my gosh, our girl is 21, and the husband's like, I'm gonna be 55, and like Blythe Danner goes like, wow, it's gonna be our 25th wedding anniversary, and they just kind of kiss, and you're like, oh, normal relationships. Those exist.
They exist in this universe.
Well, it's funny, like when we were watching it, I thought like, so you know, like they have like the manic pixie dream girl concept.
Yeah.
I thought like Juliette Lewis is the precursor to the manic pixie dream girl. It's like Woody Allen dreaming up in his head, what would be the ideal woman? And it's like, and what's the sexiest name I can give her? Rain. Like,
it's so weird.
Like that, she is such this every professor goes like, I'm going to see hot women all the time, and they're going to be intelligent, and I can talk to them, and so forth.
It's so strange.
But it's also really like there's a point in the movie where like she loses his like transcript for his book.
Oh yeah.
And they start arguing, and Rain like gives critiques of Woody Allen within the Woody Allen movie, where it says like, well, his views of women are kind of retrograde. Like everyone's thinking about cheating, and they always cheat on each other.
I didn't even think about that. That's so interesting.
And I'm just like, oh, he knows. He knows.
He's like in on the joke. Like that's what's so great about Woody Allen.
He's been making movies for too long, like to not be self-aware at this point. I feel like.
Woody Allen, as presented in all his movies, seems ultra anxious and self-aware.
Well, it's interesting because I was watching some of his stand-up last night. Like, he started out as a stand-up comedian. Like, he would be on, like, the Dick Cavett show and stuff.
But that's what's interesting. He didn't start out that way. His career didn't start out that way.
Okay, right. He started out, like, writing.
Yeah, he started out, like, writing and, like, writing for TV. And then someone was like, hey, you know what? You should try your thing as a stand-up routine. And he was like, what? It's not really that funny. And then he saw this other comedian do that. And he was like, okay, I guess I could do this. Like, long-winded. Like, Mike Birbiglia is, like, basically a successor to Woody Allen.
Yeah.
Where it's not really stand-up comedy. It's just, like, a stand-up, like...
monologue.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's interesting. What's interesting about it is that, like, you see him do that, and you're like, oh, like, he's, you know, a little eccentric, but he seems like a normal guy. Like, you suddenly realize, like, he is actually playing a character in all of his movies. Like, it's not just Woody Allen up on screen. And that actually gave me a lot more respect for, like, how good of an actor he is. Like, him and Annie Hall, I think, especially, is, like, really kind of digging into something. And
yeah, you're right.
That's Woody Allen on screen is really charming and really and a really great presence. So like that's something I kind of discovered in Hannah and Her Sisters, because we had all these great actors running around like Michael Caine, Max von Sydow, and yet Woody Allen is who steals the show for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. He does hold his own with all of that cast. That's actually a really good point. I didn't even think about that.
All right, so before we move on to Hannah's, just do we have any final thoughts on Husbands and Wives?
It's a different mode for Woody Allen insofar as mockumentary, and I think it's a really fascinating form of mockumentary.
Yeah.
In a way where it still feels cinematic, and there's like a real sense of camera, but that camera feels trapped.
Just one last point I wanted to make about it was like, you talked about this earlier, how they'll like talk about their experiences and they'll kind of cut away and like show you those experiences. Like, I kind of love that because, like, you talk about the theatricality of it. Like, these are things that, like, people would talk about in a play. They'd be just, like, kind of a monologue. But in the movie, like, you see it. So, you know, Woody Allen definitely knows, like, how to be cinematic.
So there's a real sense of theater in I think this one is one of his most theatrical, yet it's still cinema. He still knows the show not tell when it needs to.
Yeah, well, it's funny, like, one of our roommates was just, like, passing by, and he was there for the beginning, and he was like, wow, the way he used the camera there, like, you could tell he had to have choreographed that with the actors in order for it to work, because, like, the cameraman's moving, and then the actors have to move, and it's like a dance, right? And then I thought to myself, yeah, it is really interesting how cinematic, how visual he is. Like, we don't think of Woody Allen as, like, a supremely visual filmmaker, but he actually does have a specific visual style that he's, like, sticks to pretty clearly. Like, just like Wes Anderson. Like, Woody Allen, his style is like...
It's a lot of medium wides.
Yeah, a lot of medium wides, like, the way he moves the camera. But what I was thinking about is, like, I wonder if on Husbands and Wives, if the experience actually freed up actors, because I was like, I wonder if they're thinking as hard about making their marks, or they're thinking even more about making their marks, because now the cameraman has to do all of this, like, weird movement. Like, I was like, is that freeing or not for these people?
It feels like, this is a movie, like, definitely before the time when, like, shaky cam just became the shorthand for, like, we don't have a budget. Let's just, like, shoot whatever the fuck, and, like, we're not gonna plan it, we're not gonna storyboard it, whatever. Like, this feels like a very deliberate choice. So that aspect of it is very, very fascinating.
Oh yeah, well, of course, and sometimes Woody Allen will just pull out a really wonderful image and just a really wonderful composition. So he's a filmmaker.
That's like the best way to put it.
I really liked Husbands and Wives. I thought it was really fun and fascinating.
I think maybe I liked it more than I thought I did. I'll probably give it another watch a few years down the line.
I think it's just because we watched it straight up after.
Like, it's true. We watched these movies basically back to back, and I'd also just had lunch and was feeling pretty tired. So, but that was that. So let's talk about Hannah and Her Sisters, though.
You can't overdo it with Woody Allen. I did learn. Hannah and Her Sisters. What is this? 1980...
1986, I believe.
86. Okay.
So this is kind of held up as like one of Husbands and Wives is kind of like a forgotten classic. Like it's not even on Blu-ray. Yeah. Hannah and Her Sisters is one of his most acclaimed. He won some Oscars for it.
It's really good.
He won screenplay. Michael Caine won supporting actor, and I think Diane Wiest won supporting actress.
She's really good.
She is really good. It's an interweaved like big family saga, and taking place like across like 2 years, and it begins and ends at Thanksgiving. And one thing I wanted to bring up, both of these movies, Woody Allen is not really the lead of these movies. He is one cog in this big ensemble cast machine, and what I found is that he's really good at ensemble cast movies.
Yeah, like this is like I tried to think about like who is the main character, and I realized, oh wait, there isn't a main character. It's just like this big ensemble where like things are kind of self-contained, yet they spill over into other stories, and yet and at the end it kind of all comes together.
Yeah, and equal weight is given to both like Michael Caine's like existential should I leave my wife kind of crisis, and Woody Allen's existential hypochondriac am I dying crisis.
Am I dying? Should I convert to Catholicism?
Dude, that is so funny.
Woody Allen's character's storyline in this movie is so entertaining.
Like the fucking image of like him bringing home, he puts down a crucifix, I think he puts down a Bible next, then an image of Jesus, then Wonder Bread, and a jar of mayonnaise.
What I think is so what's fascinating about that whole storyline is that he's not paying off on what he's laid down for the character. He's paying off on what you know of Woody Allen. So it's like, when we see him like talking to the priest, so why do you want to join Catholicism? It's not funny because like that character has been set up so that this is now funny. It's funny because for a lifetime, Woody Allen has been the most neurotic, atheistic Jew that we've ever known, and that's what he's playing off of. Like there's nothing.
There's this image for a Jew.
Yeah, like there's nothing earlier in this film to make this funny. It's what you know of Woody Allen that makes that so funny.
That's such a good point.
Woody Allen's use of the meta of film is so fascinating.
That's true. But this movie, I really liked it, man. I mean, you said you like kind of didn't like it. I loved it. Like it all, I think, is interweaved very, very well. I love kind of the vignette structure of it, and like the ending of it, I think is just perfect. Like this is one of the rare Woody Allen movies where like everything kind of seems to work out for everybody. Yeah. Like you kind of Annie Hall has kind of a bittersweet like we're often like
love,
other relationships sort of and but like we're kind of relationships are just such a strange thing. Manhattan kind of ends on like just a really like ambiguous kind of cliffhanger. This movie, like, everyone's paired off. They seem to be in very happy relationships. And that last shot where, like, Diane Wiest tells, like, Woody Allen she's pregnant when it's been established earlier on that, like, he was supposed to be infertile. That, to me, is just beautiful. That's a good. I love this movie.
Because I was telling him, like, Hannah's an interesting character because it's, like, she's the girl who like embraced like feminism and being independent, and like the world is like punishing her for it. Because Michael Caine's like, you have no needs. He's like, I'm over you, and it's like, but this is what we want. This is what we want our girls to grow up. And it's like, no, girls can be this woman and then not be happy. And it was like, I thought that was really fascinating.
And that interesting thing that Michael Caine desires the other woman because he can take care of her and that she is dependent.
Right.
Like that's really interesting.
Which is so strange.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I actually wanted Michael Caine to cheat on his wife in this movie. Like, I was rooting for their love story the entire time. I was like, I really want Michael Caine to get what he wants. Like, partially that's because he's Michael Caine, and he's, like, just so charming.
And everyone loves Michael Caine.
But it's just, like...
Well, it's weird because, like, but in this movie, he's kind of playing, like, a really not a great, like, person. Like,
But he, like, admits it, too. He's like, I just had a great time. He's like, Lee was so great. Now I'm about to cuddle with her sister. I'm a really bad man. Now I'm tired. He's like, I should never do this again.
He'll just go into these days like, oh God, what am I doing? I'm sleeping with my wife now. I need to kill this now. And then she calls and like, no, I can't do this.
Yeah, it's so good.
I don't know. I think my issue is that like I failed to see how it all connects together. And like another thing is that like for one thing is like I actually don't think the Hannah and her sisters. I think those are the more boring characters. Like, the most, like, interesting characters are, like, Michael Caine, like, I think all the Woody Allen bits in this movie are gold.
Yeah.
Absolutely goddamn
The
gold.
scene where he's like gonna shoot himself and then it like slides off his forehead and like shoots the mirror or something.
So good.
The degree of dark comedy going on in those bits is so fascinating.
Yeah.
And like he's blink and you miss him, but Max von Sydow is such an interesting character that he just kind of is going to the side. Like, isn't it like he was like her professor?
Yeah.
Is that what that is? He professor, and he's living with her, and they didn't get married, and like he constantly feels out of sync with the world. I'm like, God, what an interesting character.
Well,
why isn't he in it more?
I almost feel like the Max von Sydow character is like if you see Woody Allen's character from Husbands and Wives played out. Like, this is him now, years in the future, as a bitter old man. And it's like, that's basically kind of like the way I saw Husbands and Wives. It's like, oh, this is this plot line, but we're going to do it at a much earlier point. Like, he was always doing this. He was always romancing his students and things like that.
Like, I know, and that's the thing, like, I don't, like, how do you guys see, like, all these pieces fitting together? Because I kind of, especially after considering that, like, there's literally, like, a cut to black quote from either from the sketch or from something related, and then it plays out. Like, I found it really episodic, and I'm curious, like, how does it all fit together for y'all?
I mean, the storylines continue. I mean, it's not just like short stories where everything is like starting over again, and it's more like each one is kind of a separate incident, but it's continuing off of what came before. Like, you couldn't take any of these segments and just like drop it in somewhere. Like, they all have to happen like in this order. It all proceeds. I feel like I thought it was a very like tightly constructed screenplay. Like, everything is kind of fitting together and seated and paying off, and I don't know. I just felt like it cohesed very, very well.
No, it does come together because like there's a good bit of like just so like it has to happen in this order. There's like a good bit of irony when like Hannah realizes that her sister knows a little bit too much about her marriage. So then, but the way it happens is so indirect because it's like she knows this because, you know, her other sister told her, and because her other sister's sleeping with her husband. Like, it's so indirect.
Like, how do you know this? Like, how does this all fit together? And she's having a crisis about it. And
it's like a bit of irony where the irony isn't so heavy-handed because of how convoluted the causes are of that irony. Like, you think of, like, a really good use of irony is, like, I don't know, Inglourious Basterds, like, oh my god, we know they're not Nazis, they're Nazis. It's, like, simple. Like, this is why. There's irony. It's, like, so simple. But in this case, it's, like, so intricately wound together. You're like, this is so complicated. And then when it all, like, unravels, you're like, this is cool. Like, I think what stitches this together is, like, he made a movie about a clique of sisters that were, like, something that all the boys were fascinated by and like had terrible experiences with them when they finally got them. Like, that's what this movie is. It's like, oh yeah, Hannah and her sisters. Like, they were that trio of girls that we all dreamed of being with. Like,
oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's like if you
they're three manic pixie dream girls.
Yeah, in a way.
Let's pretend for a second that like the Kardashians like weren't famous and weren't terrible people.
This is,
you're like, oh, like the Kardashian sisters, and then like once you got together with them, you were like, oh no.
That's actually a perfect analogy for how this film works. Actually, like,
that's interesting. Like,
because you think about it, the happiest character in the film is like Woody Allen's character, right? And it's because he finally falls in love with the sister that nobody like. That you at the beginning of the film, you think she's the worst one.
Yeah.
She's always begging for money.
Likes her, and it's like, oh, she's kind of the best one.
She ends up being like the most healthy, like well-developed like person in the whole thing.
It's like when Khloe Kardashian loses weight, and you're like, hey, she's actually the best-looking one. Or like, you're like, she's got the most.
We need to get off this.
Hey, now I can put Kardashian in the title, and maybe we'll get more hits on this episode.
Oh no, that's out of all the ways to get popular, that was the one.
Like, of all the morally egregious Kardashians, Khloe's the least morally egregious one.
No, I feel like culture has maybe turned on the Kardashians. Okay, we're talking about something else now.
No, but it's still similar. It's still similar because that's what this movie's about. It's about a clique of girls who are so crazy that they can only get along with each other, right? Like, because how common is it for like women of this age to really be this close to each other and have so few like close friends in their social circle? Like, they're like, to a really great degree, super close, to a degree where like the guys in this movie are now like having sex with multiple of the sisters. Like Woody Allen had previously gone out with another sister before he like married. Like he married one before he lands this one. Michael Caine is like lusting after one sister as he's like at a party with his wife. Like it's so weird the way this movie like plays with that.
It's oddly like a theater, not theater, like a high school clique of friends.
Yeah.
Only they're all related now.
Right.
Like that's kind of like everyone's sleeping with each other. And like, I just divorced from him. Maybe you would like him as my sister. And that's like this. I'm like, oh, that's so weird. That's so fascinating. But I guess like from like the three manic pixie dream girls lens, I think that's really interesting. Like, and how like it's about them, but it also becomes more about like Woody Allen and Max von Sydow and Michael Caine.
Yeah, but I kind of push back against the idea that like they're all manic pixie dream girls. Like Barbara Hershey's character
of Lee
like feels very real to me. I think she kind of having like this crisis of like what she wants and like kind of her own desires. And I think both of these movies actually, we didn't really talk about this in Husbands and Wives, but female sexuality is like so underaddressed in movies sometimes.
I love that
he really does take it on in these movies, which I really like.
Yeah. Like what was interesting about watching these movies is that like I was like, so Woody Allen, one of the like we would never say he has like the most progressive like opinion or view of women ever, but here's a guy who was like killing the Bechdel test and like drowning it in like a bathtub way before there was even a Bechdel test.
Like these movies passed the Bechdel test and how like women and also this is something the case like women are not passive in this, like they are actively seeking out relationships and actively seeking out men, and they are active participants in relationships.
Yeah,
that's so it seems like something that's so obvious when character building, but somehow in movies that just kind of falls away. Like
in this movie it was like there is no concept of like a strong female character. Like they're just people, and like and the way he treats that is like so mature. Especially when you have moments where she's in the car and then she's like, I said the wrong thing. Now of course I'm going to go home first. I always go home first. And it's like, you have this like you get a sense of like her history. Like she's always that girl. She's always that girl. And Hannah, and like a group of Hannah and her sisters, she's the one girl that the boys don't all lunge towards first. Like, and it was like, I thought that was great. Like she didn't have to be just strong for the sake of being strong. Some people have moments in life where they're at a weak and a disadvantaged point, and like that was her.
I will say this is one thing I really admire about Woody Allen is like he makes films about people who just don't get films made about them, like nebbishy, nervous, like intellectuals who are constantly talking about Chaucer and Luther and all that.
And I love how he always makes that character, which is himself, like into a real hotshot ladies man.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's so weird.
Well, if you looked like Woody Allen and you were able to bang the same girl that Frank Sinatra at one point did. Yeah, like Frank Sinatra.
Are we talking about this?
But like I would go through my life being pretty arrogant too. Like I'd write myself as like James Bond and everything. Like if I was with Rihanna at some point in my life, I'd write everything I ever did. I was like, I'm James Bond, guys. like you guys can't teach me anything about the world.
I have had the world revealed to me by Rihanna.
It's exactly like that.
All right, so just to wrap this up, I guess John, I can kind of see your point, but I think Hannah and Her Sisters is a beautiful movie that all the performances are just spectacular.
I like all the pieces on their own. Like that's the thing about Woody. Like they're all edited together weirdly, and sometimes they'll break filmmaking conventions and make a style out of it. And it's all really entertaining and really kinetic and really fun to watch. So, like, I can't say I don't like this movie.
All right.
You gotta say we mentioned, like, the Thanksgiving thing.
Oh, right. Well, this seems to be, like, one of the great forgotten Thanksgiving movies. Like, everyone's talking about, like, what's the Thanksgiving movie? Like, it's like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and, like, that's it. Like, no, like, this is a great Thanksgiving movie. Like, I don't know why people don't pull this out more often.
I was telling them, I think Planes, Trains...
We should pull it out more often and advertise it.
I was telling
Hannah and Her Sisters, the Thanksgiving movie.
I was telling them, like, Planes, Trains, and Automobile is, like, the definitive Thanksgiving movie. Because, like, in the logline for it, it's, I need to get home for Thanksgiving. Like, that's, like, the whole movie exists on that premise. Whereas Hannah and Her Sisters is just, like, bookended with Thanksgiving. Like,
I don't know. But it's kind of like a family saga, and that kind of fits with it. I don't know.
It is a cool family saga. Like, I did like that about it.
Yeah. All right. Let me just talk about Midnight in Paris really quick, just because I really liked it. It's a very charming movie. Owen Wilson, who's not necessarily one of our greatest actors, although strangely wrote some great screenplays with Wes Anderson back in the day.
Yeah, give him some great filmmakers. He can do something.
Yeah, but no, he makes a really compelling figure in this movie. He kind of playing the Woody Allen figure, and it kind of like he and his fiancée Rachel McAdams are like on like a vacation in Paris with her parents, and like they kind of run into like her old professor who like she had a crush on in college. Surprise, surprise. But like what I love about this movie is that it just makes him a total douchebag. Like Michael Sheen plays him. He is such an arrogant asshole, and he plays it so well. And this movie just operates kind of purely off of like dream logic, but that's totally fine. Like Owen Wilson like travels back in time every night to like the 1920s to hang out with Ernest Hemingway and Gertrude Stein and Salvador Dali and the Fitzgeralds, and he runs into kind of another kind of manic pixie dream girl type with Marion Cotillard as like this French girl who's like dating Picasso and dating Hemingway, and it's very strange. It's a weird movie, and like there's no way it should work, but it's so charming, and Paris just looks great. And it's so interesting, actually, because I noticed Husbands and Wives kind of foreshadows it, because I think there's a moment where Woody Allen is like talking to Juliette Lewis where he's like I'd love to go to Paris and like walk around at night in the rain, and then that's what Owen Wilson is all about in this movie, and it's so interesting. I can definitely see why people kind of loved this movie and kind of acclaimed it as maybe like his best of the modern period. And it's really good, and then it has a great ending gag where like Rachel McAdams' dad sends a private detective to like follow Owen Wilson around, and he like gets caught in like the time warp or whatever, and the ending gag is like he ends up back in like the 17th century or the 18th century.
Like in the Vatican or something.
No, he's like in, I think like Versailles. I think like it's like ends up in Versailles in like this 18th century.
Oh, the court.
Anyway,
well, what's funny is that you see like all the, like the cool exotic locales that he just described. He basically does reduce them to like a fantasy version of Manhattan.
Yeah, it's true.
Like what I've seen of Midnight in Paris, it's still all like Manhattan socialites interacting, and they're just next to French statues.
That's true.
And
these historical artistic figures all kind of feel like Manhattan, like intellectual socialites in a way.
But that's what's interesting about like, I feel like I'm trying to think of other filmmakers who make films like Woody Allen. The closest I can think of is like Whit Stillman. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen Whit Stillman. He did like Metropolitan, Barcelona,
I need
Days
to
of Disco.
see those movies.
Yeah, there's like these weird like yuppie kind of films. But at the same time, he's like making things that like modern culture now apes and then calls it original. Like Friends is like the modern contemporary equivalent of a fantasy version of Manhattan that just doesn't exist, right? But you kind of wish it did in a way. Like,
yeah, now that I think about it, like I've been watching like a lot of random episodes of How I Met Your Mother, and that does feel kind of like that, which is interesting. But
there is a New York, an entire fictional New York universe that is just completely different from actual New York.
It totally is. Like that's what I'm saying. Like you have New York in our heads, and then there's like New York as it is, which I would say is more like Scorsese. Like Scorsese, I feel like kind of communicates the way New York actually is. It's like rough, it's tough, it's apathetic, it's really funny. Like I like to tell people, like New York is a place where you're gonna get conned if you don't know better. Like like if you're there for a week.
Mean Streets is one of the best real New York movies.
Yeah, that is
and it's a movie no one can make anymore because Little Italy doesn't look like that anymore.
Exactly. It's like Woody Allen was making these movies in like the 70s and the 80s, and like it's at the same time that Taxi Driver is made. Like, how could a movie like Taxi? How could
That's
Taxi
so weird.
Driver?
Taxi Driver comes out a year before Eddie Hall.
When I watch like a little bit of Manhattan, I'm like, Taxi Driver just came out. Yeah. What the fuck is this?
So it's like where did you shoot to create this version of New York when Taxi Driver was just made? Like, how is that possible?
That is interesting. But I think the ultimate takeaway here is we like Woody Allen's movies.
Yeah. We like his fantasy Manhattan.
Yeah, we like to spend time there. I guess I'm gonna have to see more because like this week brings the total up to 6 Woody Allen movies that I've seen. I've seen Annie Hall in Manhattan, of course, and then I've seen the 3, including Midnight in Paris, and then I also saw Cafe Society, and that's it.
I have seen 4 Woody Allen movies now.
Okay, if you're gonna go down Woody Allen's like rabbit hole, right? I would say go to Deconstructing Harry, because like this weird like meditation on postmodernism, which is like really weird.
Shit, I actually need a pen now.
I really want to see Zelig, actually.
I think that's one of the ones that I haven't seen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's like one of his most popular ones. There's Deconstructing Harry. You guys have already seen Manhattan.
Well, he hasn't finished Manhattan.
I haven't seen Manhattan.
Manhattan, definitely put that on the list. Then I would say you can't understand Woody Allen if you don't see his id running around doing like mistakes.
Oh, does that mean we have to watch like the early comedy kind of thing?
Not the the later ones where he's like given money and able to indulge himself, like Stardust Memories or like Purple Rose of Cairo. I think is one of those two. It's like these weird movies where he's just like living his dreams. Like Interiors, I think is kind of in that a little bit because he's like, I'm gonna do Birdman.
Interior sounds interesting.
I do want to watch Interiors.
And then there's another. I would also say watch. It's actually kind of a bad movie, but why it's bad, it's fascinating. I always tell them like sometimes bad movies are more fascinating to dissect than just admiring a good movie. And I would say like watch like Hollywood Ending. It's like a weird. It's like not a very good movie. I think it's like a 20% Rotten Tomatoes score, but it's actually like really charming.
That's interesting.
Well, this is what I say. Well, granted, like my maxim is that bad movies are far better than mediocre.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Bad movies give you. Granted, good movies are on a plane all their own. Like, to me, I would rather watch like something awful like Batman v Superman than something more mediocre like Civil War or something like that.
Oh no!
Oh no! I forgot this conflict.
Anyways, I don't want to get into this again.
No, we're not going to talk about that. Not on the show. Okay,
that'll be a toll episode. But a good example of that is like I own Oliver Stone's Alexander on Blu-ray because of how weirdly fascinating that movie is. It's a $155 million movie of him making like probably one of the worst movies ever made. Probably like it's up there. If I had to make a movie like worst movies ever, it would be like that, Battlefield Earth, and then like I don't know what else. Like maybe The Blind Side.
I find Batman and Robin a fascinating movie. See, I think that is such an interesting failure.
I actually think those movies are like weirdly good because they succeed at what they're trying to be. They're trying to be Adam West Batman movies for like the 90s, and that's what they are. They're not trying.
It's so weird that like I remember watching some of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Shit, and then like right afterwards, as a joke, we watched some of Batman and Robin. I said, "Wait a minute, all the sets are real. They're acting. Wait a minute, it's a joke." And I'm thinking like, this isn't the worst.
Yeah, it's like for what it seeks out to be, it's like not bad. It's because you just have to say like it seeks out to be something that it shouldn't. And like, yeah, I agree with that. But like for what it does it pretty well. It's like if I told you, let's make a stoner Western comedy, like only with lesbians, and like you make the best version of that. Like that's what that is. Like yeah, man. Like all of a sudden, like who's the girl that you liked from Juno?
Ellen Page.
Yeah, all of a sudden Ellen Page is in this Western, and she's like smoking pot with Snoop Dogg. Like, dude, that movie was great. Like that's what Batman and Robin is. Like things that shouldn't be made, but like made very well.
Well, granted, I will say this, like, it does Adam West, but doesn't know how to do Adam West, and it does its own, like, roundabout version of it, and it doesn't fucking work, but you're like, what were you thinking? This is fascinating.
This just brings us back to we have to watch Adam West's Batman movie at some point. Yeah. But not right now, because next week...
Are we doing it?
Are you up for... what are you thinking?
Alexander Payne.
Okay, good. We're on the same page. Okay, yes, let's do some Alexander Payne next week.
Let's see. I haven't seen Nebraska.
So good.
Yes.
So good.
I'm down to watch that again. I think we should watch Sideways because that was kind of his big...
haven't seen Sideways, so...
Mid-2000s kind of big acclaimed. I think it was his most acclaimed movie until maybe The Descendants came out. I think it won the Oscar for screenplay, so... And then I know you watched this recently, but I haven't seen it, so I think I'll also watch Election.
Election.
Because I'm so intrigued.
I saw that before the election.
Oh boy. I'm very.
So,
I'll bet that movie plays very strangely now, and I'm very curious.
I've actually never
goodness.
seen Election. It's always been on TV, and I was like, oh, what is this about? Reese Witherspoon? Like,
Well, it's Reese Witherspoon playing a character based off of Hillary Clinton, but in high school.
I want to watch this with you.
And it's so tragic. It is, and that's not because that's not to say the movie itself is tragic, but within the political vacuum we have seen ourselves locked into, it is impossible to watch without comparing it to what has just occurred.
All right, let me just wrap up the show real quick.
Okay, we can just continue talking.
That's fine. But we are going to continue this conversation. Anyway, next week, Alexander Payne. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us for the show.
Thank you so much. This has been fascinating.
I think
pleasure.
It goes without saying we'd be happy to have you back at some point. So we'll see you next week for Alexander Payne Week. Good Lord.
I am... Just to talk about Trump a little bit, like, I've never seen an Oliver Stone movie.
Have you either?
I have. I saw JFK, and JFK is really good.
See,
JFK is really good.
Lately,
I remember, like, Reed said some things about about Snowden, and I couldn't quite decipher whether they were good things or not.
He's become like this. Like, I think I was talking to you the other day. Scorsese has become a filmmaker who, like, he's like really the old guy who was once the rebel, but he like refuses to like really adapt because he's always been way ahead of his time. Whereas Oliver Stone was like the angry rebel who somehow becomes so calm and pacified, and like, but his politics have still become more radical.
I watched a bit of Animu, but like I'm not too sure this is a venue for that. I have some of that same disease where I say I want to make a movie about Kafka, not the works of Kafka, the life of Kafka. And I am every pretentious filmmaker you have ever met in one package. You will find
Not just European.
Yeah, and they like look at him. They're
Oh
like,
God, my voice is echoing. Oh no!
It's not on this end. You're good.
Okay, good.
This just moved up on my list of 3-hour biopics to watch. Right below Amadeus, which
Amadeus is amazing.
Right now,
by the way.
I just have Nixon, Citizen Kane, Clinton quotes, JFK, Bible quotes, Shakespeare.
Yeah,
and like this is all I need to sell me on it.